It's a very good question why scent is so underestimated. It's something that's purely emotional, and it's very difficult to measure. It's the only sense that you cannot rationally filter, that goes directly into the limbic system, and they always have an effect on your behavior, on your emotions, on the decision making.
What falls under the category of visual art? Painting, drawing, sculpture, installation, photography, film. These are all things that you can understand with your eyes, right? With scent, you can't experience it visually.
As an artist, scent is a new world, and it's a huge world. It's so big that probably even us don't know the limits.
Mike Kelley was one of the most significant and consequential artists of his generation. And really, I think almost all of his work comes from an examination of American culture, and particularly middle-class American culture, and challenging that, challenging everything from gender norms to understanding of family structures. He's interested in stuffed animals as a subject matter because they reveal so much about the culture in which they're made. I think the classic Mike Kelley stuffed animal work are these arenas where he lays out a crocheted blanket and then positions stuffed animals on top of it. And as he was using this as a sculptural material, people were like, why are you hurting these stuffed animals? And he thought that was a really interesting reaction. And the idea was, well, this is a material like any other, and yet people have this really strong reaction to it.
Everybody has their own opinion of these ideologies, and that's their business. I just want, to deal with the conventions of them and show how there's these certain metaphoric connections about them at root. That's what the work's about.
From one work to the next, he would try to see, like, what can I do with this material to break that connection between the viewer and this object? And he basically, I think, found that it was an impossible endeavor. Deodorized Central Mass with satellites is one of two large-scale last kind of sculptures that he's made with stuffed animals. And so one thing that he thought he would do would be like, well, the place where you most connect with one of these stuffed animals is in their face. So he's like, okay, so for this work, I'm gonna sew them all face in so that people can't see the faces, which like in the end is actually creepier. So I think initially you're like, wow, this is so beautiful. And then you kind of get closer and they're quite confrontational, these objects. They're a bit grotesque. The animals are dirty. It's almost these weird little tumors circling this giant, effectively malignant tumor that's in the center of the room. You start picking up on that. And then things start changing and getting a little bit more uncomfortable. The way that you see certain stuffed animals treated, legs hanging out of the ball as though the ball's devouring it. All different kinds of little psychodramas are playing out in these spheres. Perhaps you want to back away, and then you back away, and then all around the room, these things that look like candies start looking almost militaristic, like soldiers lining up. They are quite ominous. The edges are sharp, and then they emit, without warning, this mist. You're like, what's going on? It pushes you kind of further back into the room, back into these stuffed animals that you were trying to get away from in the first place. And then you're hit with this smell, and you're like, what is up with the smell?
I don't use my nose very often.
I know, it can fool you.
Quite often when we do experience scent, we think about it from a preservation perspective because that means something is wrong with the work.
Right, the smell is a symptom of something more.
Yeah.
These deodorizers that surround the room have a mechanism built within them, and you just fill up the tank with the fluid, and there's a timer built in, and then it aerosolizes and it sprays out into the room.
Yep.
This was originally conceived to spray an odor that is a little jarring and supposed to smell like urinal cake.
And if the concoction that's within the spraying mechanism is rather thick, then it's gonna clog up and start dripping on the sides of the very brightly colored deodorizers. And as a result, it actually can strip the paint.
And so we were thinking of ways to reduce that. Scent Communications is based in Cologne, Germany, and they create scents for lots of different companies.
And they have different ways of disseminating the scent as well. So we picked their brain and like what would be the best way to actually trying to disseminate this scent while trying to maintain the original integrity of the work.
Well, we started the business because we understood that scent was a completely underestimated way of communicating. And from there on, we learned a lot about scent, and how complex scents are, how emotional, but also how good you can remember scents. Scents are very complex and very difficult to handle. It's very volatile, it changes all the time. And technologically, our approach was to be as close to nature as possible. Just think of a flower. It's full of molecules, scent molecules that are constantly released. And this is something that we try to copy. So we have different materials that we developed, dry materials that store a very high quantity of fragrance molecules, and we release them through an airflow. My role very often is to translate between an artist and a perfumer, because the perfumer always has a very clear way to design a fragrance for a body, typically. But an artist, of course, thinks differently. Mike Kelley probably didn't think about creating a nice, beautiful environment, but wanted to kind of disturb. The first time he showed this installation was in Cologne, and this is most likely the reason why he purchased German products for the scent. The Sacrotan K disinfectant is a cleaning product, so it's something that smells really clean, but once it's freshly used, you're reluctant in entering a space that smells like that. It's something that's maybe a little bit aggressive. But then combined with this Kiefer product that you use in order to relax when you take a bath. This is an interesting contrast, but it's connected through this natural raw material of this pine tree. And probably because it's natural, you feel comfortable with it. And something that's aggressive and disinfects has nothing to do with nature. This strange mixture of ingredients is something difficult to describe, and only an artist can come up with.
So we have kind of developed with scent communication these amazing little scent pods that in them have gel components that hold on to the scent. Much like a plug-in, if you can think of where you have a cartridge and you're putting in the cartridge.
But the deodorizers themselves will be still spraying, but it'll just be plain water.
Okay.
And so that can kind of cut down, again, on this aerosolized mixture. It's safer for the artwork as well as our public.
Yes.
But still keep the kind of visual or experiential
Yes.
quality.
The
in place.
hissing.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly, the hissing.
Yes.
Should we smell it?
I think
I'm
so.
so excited. It just
I
arrived.
know.
So
There you go.
Okay. It's funny. It's like you get the pine, but then there's that like burning quality. It's almost like an after smell. First you first you have the spruce, and then like later that.
Yeah, that is.
that's kind
Yeah.
It does smell like a
it
urinal.
fools
cake.
you a little
Yeah.
bit.
It feels like it tricks you. You're like, that's not so bad.
Oh, yeah.
It does kind of harken to the disinfectants that were used in Jordan, where I grew up. When I smell them, I do have this kind of instantaneous memory of like being a child growing up there, thinking about like my mom cleaning the house. So there is a sense of comfort in it.
Yeah. I remember this myself when I had my favorite, it wasn't a stuffed animal, it was a pillowcase, to the point of like, it sort of doesn't matter. But like every time my parents washed it, I was so upset because it had like kind of taken on this scent. It maybe smelled a little bit like me, or smelled a little bit like what I was doing that day. So I wonder if that too is something that he's kind of playing on, that by cleaning them, he's sort of wiping away part of their significance. The deodorizers are modeled after the kind of deodorizers you would find in a bathroom. They're meant to cleanse the stuffed animals, but as we know, any type of room deodorizer only masks the smell. It never gets rid of it.
If you smell disinfectant, you know it's clean, yeah? But maybe it's more complex. You think about what was there before, and it wasn't clean.
I think the smell just heightens your kind of emotional state because it's like just another kind of sensory information that's hitting you in a room that's already quite full of that. Even during the course of sitting here for this interview, it's starting to like, instead of getting used to it, I feel like it just like, it becomes amplified and it becomes more and more uncomfortable. Smell is the kind of strongest carrier of memory. That smell can evoke a range of things, but all things that sort of point outside beyond an experience that you would typically have at a museum.
Well, for me, there's no good and no bad scent. It's all related to your personal memory, to your experiences, to your cultural context. And if you've learned it's a bad smell, but other people find it beautiful. Every museum has its smell, and there's no neutral environment anyway. I mean, you're always surrounded by millions of scent molecules wherever you go.
We were talking about the scent component and whether we need warning labels. And I thought that was a little silly living in New York, where it's like you're bombarded with scents left and right, and like there are no warnings. It's part of the world that we live in.